Klotho is something you've probably never heard of before, but I think more people should know about it. Klotho is an emerging anti-aging hormone that's produced by a few different tissues in the body, but primarily by the kidneys. Now, why do I think Klotho is so important? Well, because lower levels of Klotho have been linked to higher risk of cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative conditions, chronic kidney disease, diabetes, and even cancer. So if it's so important, you may be wondering, well, why have I never heard of this before? And that's a great question. And the answer is because it was only discovered in like 1997. But if you take a look at this, if you search PubMed, the world's largest database of medical research, you will find thousands of published studies on Klotho, and the number has skyrocketed over the past 2 decades. So why the explosion of research? Because scientists are realizing that Klotho isn't just a hormone. It's a master regulator of how we age. Now, technically, Klotho is a gene that makes the Klotho protein, and then this Klotho protein kind of acts like a hormone in the body. But without getting into too much of these academic details, what researchers have learned over the past few years is that increased levels of Klotho causes increased longevity in organisms across different species. But on the flip side, disrupting Klotho production results in accelerated aging. Now in humans, there are studies that show a very strong association between higher levels of Klotho, better brain resiliency, better cognition, less calcification in the arteries, better metabolism, and others. But here's where it gets personal. The organ that makes the majority of Klotho is your kidneys. And kidney dysfunction starts often before anyone notices. Now you might say, my kidneys are fine. But the reality is large-scale studies that look at kidney function in the USA find almost 20% of adults, almost 1 in 5, have chronic kidney disease, and 90% of them have no idea that they have chronic kidney disease. And I'm not making that up. These are real numbers. Chronic kidney disease usually goes on without symptoms for years. But as kidney function declines, so does Klotho production. And to make matters worse, the standard lab test that your doctor uses to check your kidneys often misses it completely, which means that many people who think their kidneys are fine because their doctor told them they were, the reality is they weren't digging deep enough. So in this video, we're going to talk about Klotho, but more importantly, how to detect kidney disease earlier because 1, kidneys produce Klotho. 2, Klotho levels are highly correlated with kidney function, such that people with lower kidney function have significantly lower Klotho levels. And 3, Klotho might be one of the most important predictors of your overall health. So let's just take a step back for a minute and go way back in time to 1997. Researchers found this kidney-derived protein called Klotho. It was a massive breakthrough, and yet most physicians still have never heard of it. But since then, thousands of studies have linked low Klotho levels to faster kidney decline, higher blood pressure, more vascular calcification, cognitive decline, and even aging itself. But there's a huge relationship between Klotho levels and vitamin D. They're kind of partners in crime, or in this case, partners in health. The reason lies in the kidneys. So let's just go through some vitamin D metabolism here. When sunlight hits your skin, the UVB rays convert cholesterol into vitamin D3, the same form that's found in most supplements and foods in the diet. Now this D3 travels to the liver where it's converted to 25-hydroxyvitamin D, which is the storage form that you measure on most blood tests. But from there, it moves to the kidneys, and the kidneys activate it into 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D, also known as calcitriol, the form of vitamin D that helps regulate calcium, bone health, immune function, and more. Now the parathyroid gland sits right behind your thyroid, and it monitors the situation. And the parathyroid glands release PTH, or parathyroid hormone, which tells the kidneys to make more of this 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D. So when the kidneys are functioning well, they make Klotho. And Klotho helps protect this process. It helps it run smoothly. Klotho and vitamin D form this self-reinforcing loop. Adequate Klotho supports kidney activation of vitamin D, and active vitamin D helps maintain Klotho expression. And when either is low, the other tends to decline too, creating this self-perpetuating deficiency cycle that accelerates aging and kidney dysfunction. So think of it this way. Your liver stores the vitamin D, but the kidneys activate it, right? And that activation depends on Klotho. But when kidney function starts to slip, Klotho production drops. That leads to less conversion of vitamin D into its active form of 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D, rising phosphate levels, increased levels of parathyroid hormone, and a surge in inflammatory and fibrotic signaling. Now, if we can get just a bit deeper into the weeds here for a second, one of the main fibrotic drivers of chronic kidney disease is a molecule called TGF-beta, or transforming growth factor beta. In small amounts, TGF-beta actually helps repair tissues. But when it stays switched on, it causes your kidneys to lay down scar tissue and harden and lose function. So again, you end up in this vicious cycle. Low Klotho results in low active vitamin D, which results in higher PTH, which results in more TGF-beta, which results in more scarring, and even lower Klotho. So how did we get here, right, to this epidemic of chronic kidney disease and low Klotho? Well, chronic inflammation shuts down Klotho production, plain and simple. When inflammatory molecules like TGF-beta and reactive oxygen species and NF-kappa B, if they're chronically elevated, the kidneys stop making enough Klotho. But inflammation isn't this abstract thing. It's driven by diet and stress and lack of sleep and toxins that keep your immune system stuck in the on position, right? And that's why one reason why people with diabetes or hypertension or autoimmune conditions, they tend to lose kidney function faster, kind of like their inflammatory volume knob is stuck on high, right? But without Klotho, your kidneys lose their built-in protection against oxidative stress and fibrosis. So again, we end up in this sort of self-amplifying loop. But now, the good news. You can increase Klotho. Several studies have shown that resveratrol and curcumin, both plant-derived compounds, can help increase Klotho levels and protect your kidney tissue. In animal models of diabetic and hypertensive kidney disease, resveratrol activated an enzyme called SIRT1, which directly increased Klotho production and reduced fibrosis. But in human studies, resveratrol supplementation has been shown to lower markers of oxidative stress and improve endothelial function, both of which correlate with higher Klotho levels. Now, curcumin, the main compound in turmeric, acts as a potent anti-inflammatory agent, right? It blocks NF-kappa B, which is kind of like the master switch for inflammation. And curcumin might also help restore Klotho production in damaged kidney tissue. And both resveratrol and curcumin also inhibit TGF-beta, right? We talked about TGF-beta a minute ago, reducing the formation of fibrotic scar tissue. So when we talk about like protecting your Klotho, these compounds have a real mechanistic backing. Now, that's not to say protecting your kidneys and Klotho production sort of stop at those two supplements. No, I mean, there's other notable supplements like sulforaphane and bicalin, but it's not just about supplements, right? A healthy lifestyle can't be ignored, which would include avoiding alcohol, avoiding processed foods, certainly avoiding non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, which definitely damage the kidneys, things like Motrin and Advil and Celebrex and Aleve. But of all the interventions to improve Klotho production, and the one with the most robust research and the largest effect is regular exercise. That has been shown over and over again to improve Klotho production. But the thing to remember here is that chronic kidney disease is not just like one single process. It's a web of reinforcing loops. Inflammation reduces Klotho. Low Klotho reduces active vitamin D. Low active vitamin D raises parathyroid hormone and TGF-beta. High TGF-beta creates more fibrosis and oxidative stress. And then that inflammation further lowers Klotho, and around we go into this spiral. Meanwhile, high phosphate from processed foods accelerates vascular calcification, which adds cardiovascular stress to the mix. So, like I said, it's a downward spiral, but the same loops that can drive this decline can also be reversed by calming inflammation, restoring Klotho, and the earlier you intervene, the easier it is to reverse. But unfortunately, a lot of testing falls short, right? So if we just take vitamin D as an example, most doctors, if they test vitamin D, which most don't, but if they do, they test 25-hydroxyvitamin D. That's the standard lab test. But that's the storage form. And remember, your kidneys have to activate it into 1,25 dihydroxy vitamin D, which is the form that does a lot of the work, right? Including stimulating Klotho. So if your kidneys are sort of underperforming, you can have a perfectly normal 25 hydroxy vitamin D level on your blood work, but still be functionally low in the active form, the 125 dihydroxy vitamin D. And that's why when kidney function or inflammation is suspected, we should also measure, yes, the 25 hydroxy vitamin D that shows the storage, but also the 125 dihydroxy vitamin D to see if that conversion in the kidney is taking place. And then another measurement is parathyroid hormone, because high parathyroid hormone can mean that vitamin D receptors are being downregulated. We should also check phosphate levels, because excess phosphate can worsen calcification and inflammation. In other words, just checking vitamin D often isn't enough. You have to sort of look at the whole loop, right? But as I was saying earlier, while Klotho may be produced in the kidneys and have a massive effect on the kidney, it has a reach far beyond the kidneys, right? Klotho has a big influence on the heart and the brain and overall longevity. It protects arteries from calcification, it keeps blood pressure in check, and it shields neurons from oxidative damage. But low Klotho levels aren't just found in kidney disease, right? They're found in a whole number of different chronic conditions. So when you protect your kidneys, you're not just preserving the filtration and the health of the kidney, you're literally slowing down biologic aging. And I just want to talk about one other aspect of testing, because testing the kidneys is so important. Standard testing often misses chronic kidney disease, because when evaluating for the health of the kidneys, the test that most doctors rely on is called the eGFR, or the estimated glomerular filtration rate. It's kind of the industry standard, and it's based on creatinine, which is a byproduct of muscle and protein metabolism. Creatinine is an amino acid, right? It's supposed to be filtered out by the kidneys. So if you have high levels of creatinine in the blood, the assumption is that your kidneys aren't filtering it properly. So we say you have a low eGFR, or estimated glomerular filtration rate. So I'll just repeat that. If you have high levels of the amino acid creatinine in the blood, your eGFR will be calculated as being low. So then you might be told that you have poor kidney function. But if you eat a lot of protein, if you worked out the day before you get your blood test, if you have a lot of muscle mass, you may have artificially high creatinine levels. And it's because of that, not because your kidneys aren't functioning right. But, if we flip the script and we say, what if you don't have a lot of muscle mass? What if you don't eat a lot of protein? Well, that would mean that you have much less creatinine floating around in your blood, which means the assumption is that your kidneys are filtering it properly, so that makes your eGFR look artificially better than what it actually is. So you're told your kidneys are fine, but the reality is your kidneys are not fine. And that's why a better test called Cystatin C should be used. Cystatin C is made by every nucleated cell in the body, and it's filtered by the kidneys. So because it's made by every nucleated cell in the body, it's not affected by diet or protein intake or muscle mass, right? And larger studies, often tracking hundreds of thousands of people, show that Cystatin C-based eGFR predicts frailty and heart disease and mortality far more accurately than the standard creatinine-based eGFR. In addition, there is a worse prognosis if there's a larger gap between the creatinine-based eGFR and the cystatin-based eGFR. So if you want a true picture of your kidney function, ask your doctor for a Cystatin C-based eGFR. It's the early warning that a creatinine-based eGFR test cannot give. So what can you do, right? Well, first of all, ask for a Cystatin C-based eGFR. Next, test both regular 25-hydroxy vitamin D, but also ask for 125 dihydroxy vitamin D and parathyroid hormone. You can reduce inflammation through exercise, omega-3 fatty acids, curcumin, resveratrol. Certainly lower your phosphate intake so you avoid processed foods and colas and whatnot. And most importantly, get regular movement, because exercise directly increases Klotho production. Because once you understand how Klotho works, you realize that kidney health isn't just about your kidney, it's whole body health. So next time you get your labs done, don't just glance at your creatinine and your eGFR or your vitamin D number. Remember, almost 20% of US adults have chronic kidney disease, and 90% of them have no idea that they have it. So ask for the full picture. Cystatin C, 125 dihydroxy vitamin D, not just the regular vitamin D, PTH, phosphate, because protecting your kidneys isn't just about protecting your kidneys. It's protecting your heart and your brain and your future. So thanks for watching.